The chair now lays out Senate Bill 2713, 2713, and recognizes its author, our colleague, Senator Middleton, who's playing the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, for allowing me to lay out Senate Bill 2713. Today, we're considering a bill about something very foundational to our American liberty, and that is the right to free speech and assembly. Across Texas, individuals are being potentially shut out of their own professional communities for nothing more than expressing their views on social media or in public forums. Senate Bill 2713 ensures that no Texan will be denied membership or access in professional or trade associations because of their race, religion, sex, or disability, which is already law, but also because of their constitutional protected right to speak and freely assemble. In other words, this bill reaffirms that your ability to work and practice your trade in Texas does not depend on your political or religious beliefs or who you associate with. This bill closes the door on ideological discrimination by trade organizations. Members, the First Amendment doesn't end when you clock in, and yet too many Texans today find themselves faced with adverse action and forced to choose between staying silent or risking expulsion from their trade industry. Senate Bill 2713 fixes that. It draws a clear line. Professional associations cannot blacklist or gatekeep the tools of a profession based on race, religion, sex, disability, freedom of speech, or freedom of assembly. We're going to hear compelling testimony from those who have lost access to essential professional systems simply because they spoke out about an election, posted online about a policy issue, attended a rally, or posted a Bible verse. Whether you're liberal or conservative, religious or secular, no one should fear blacklisting for speaking their mind. Members, if we believe in free speech and assembly, then we have to act when those freedoms are punished. If we believe in work and opportunity, then we must prevent associations from becoming political speech gatekeepers. And with that, I yield for questions.
Thank you, Senator Middleton. Senator Birdwell, you're recognized.
I know I'm asking a lot of questions today, Mr. Chairman. Senator Middleton, great bill. In reading it last night, I clearly read your intent, but I think the way it's phrased may be a drafting error. Line 10 and line 12 of page 1. Let me read it to you here. It says, a professional or trade association or organization may not deny, and that's the key phrase, or organization, may not deny a person access to or membership or participation in the association or organization. And the way I read that initially was that's actually 3 different entities: the professional, the trade, or an organization. So you have private organizations that are religious in nature, that their membership may be based upon, a belief in this faith, a belief in that faith. It strikes me that instead of the trade association or organization, if you have a slash there so that it's just professional or trade, because otherwise it's possible this could be interpreted to mean that organizations that are private, that their memberships are driven by, particularly in the religious arena, by a particular set of beliefs, this could apply to them.
That's a good catch, Senator Birdwell. I know we've talked to your office about it. Obviously, that's not our intent. These are private nonprofits.
I know it's not your intent, but when I read it, I was like,
clarify. I agree. We're going to work on clarifying that.
Okay.
So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, senators. Members, any other questions for the author on 2713? Very well. We'll open testimony, and the chair calls as invited witnesses Brian Talley, Brandon Huber, Pastor Brandon Huber, Chad DeVries, Wilson Farmer. Mr. I'll take that chair over on the end. We'll put you over there. You'll go first, right there. Yes, sir. Wilson Falber. And Jamie Haynes. Looks like we have Mr. Talley, Pastor Hubert, Chad DeVries, Wilson Farber, Jamie Haynes, and that'll complete this panel. Welcome to each of you. Ms. Talley, welcome. Now, when you're on the end of the table, you got to get close to the microphone, so snug up close, introduce yourself, give us your testimony. Welcome.
Good morning, Senators. My name's Brian Talley. I'm a father of 3 girls here in Austin. I'm a real estate broker with 27 years of experience. I'm here representing myself. Over the years, I've volunteered hundreds of hours serving our professional associations, pouring my heart into an industry I believe is a bastion of freedom for millions of members nationwide. I want to see it stay that way. As a real estate professional, I strongly support the associations and multiple listing service, or MLS, for the vital role they play in our industry, and I uphold professional conduct in practice. In all my years of service, I've acted in good faith and within my authority to advance the best interests of the associations and their mission to elevate our profession. I'm here to say that I believe Texas can strengthen professional associations in general by addressing rules that may infringe on free speech while preserving the high standards of professionalism and ethics that we're committed to. Professional associations play a vital role in supporting their industries and exert significant influence over competitive access to professional practice. In the real estate sector, for example, ethics hearings are confidential, and local associations often own and control access to the multiple listing service. Similarly, associations exert influence over doctors, lawyers, and other professionals. Some private nonprofit professional associations maintain that they're not subject to constitutional protections despite wielding substantial market power. Professional association members have faced severe punishment in Texas and other states, such as large fines, and some have been expelled for expressing their religious and political beliefs, despite not breaking any laws, and to my knowledge, aligning with protections under the Texas and U.S. Constitution. SB 2713 addresses this issue in a way that supports association members while upholding high ethical standards across all professional associations. Free speech is not a partisan issue. It benefits Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike. It prevents any single group from capturing an association to silence others, whether someone's advocating for their community, running for office, or sharing their beliefs. I'm proud to see Representative Ellen Troxclair, a fellow real estate professional, championing free speech in the House through her co-authorship of a similar bill. I hope the Senate and House can come together in a short time, or the short amount of time remaining in the session, to ensure that professional association members are not subject to another 2 years of punishment or expulsion and the resulting harm to them and their families due to limits on our basic speech rights.
Now, thanks for your testimony. We're going to have questions at the end. We'll hear from each witness. Thanks for being here. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the community. My name is Pastor Brandon Huber. I serve as the lead pastor of Freedom Bible Church in Missoula, Montana. I'm blessed to be here with you guys today, so thank you. I'm married to a beautiful wife of 23 years. Together we're raising 6 daughters, 1 son, and also I am a former realtor. Yes, you heard that right. I'm a former realtor because my access to the MLS and our organization was denied due to the 10.5 hate speech clause found in the Code of Ethics. How did it happen? In 2019 to 2021, our church partnered with our local food bank, and we handed out lunches to children in our community during the summertime, so they had food because they didn't obviously have access to school lunches. In 2021, a Pride flyer was included in those lunches, and as a pastor of the church at the time, I called a meeting with the board and the church board, let them know what happened, and then from there we decided to terminate our agreement with the Missoula Food Bank due to those Pride flyers being put in the lunches without the church's knowledge. Because of that, there was backlash within our community, and a community member filed an ethics complaint against my real estate license And ultimately I was told you cannot be a pastor and a realtor, because even giving a sermon from the pulpit on Sunday, I could offend somebody and they would then file another ethics complaint. An important part of this 10.5, this hate speech code, is any realtor is on duty now 24/7. So we could be having a conversation here amongst you guys and offend somebody, and they would file an ethics complaint within the realtor organization. So the backlash happened, and it's ultimately, because I stood on biblical truth and because the church stood firm, I was found guilty from my peers under the 10.5 hate speech code for hate speech and discrimination. They fined me $5,000 in order to take a diversity course, and because I would not, in good faith, and by my conscience comply, I lost access to the MLS and as to be able to use the trademark of Realtor, which is the heartbeat of the industry. This still affects my livelihood today. It's cost us of financial stability. It forced us to sell our hobby farm. It brought threats against my family, even death threats against my family. And within the last month, so mind you, this took place in 2021, within the last month, it has affected my church and also the Christian academy that we were going to, or that we're in the process of opening in Montana. So this hasn't stopped, and here we are. Please understand that all of this was being done through church and my pastoral capacity, and not me acting as a realtor. Because of the size and the influence of Texas, America's watching. What you decide here today or through this committee, America's watching. It's organizations like the NAR that can silence pastors, then who's next? The Bar Association, the AMA. Where does it end? So members of this committee, I urge you to vote yes on this bill, and you have a critical opportunity to protect the freedom of countless Texans and Americans. I was the first national test case under this so-called hate speech code, and I urge you to stand for your fellow Texans and for the freedoms of all America. Today, you will see many of us standing shoulder to shoulder, defending faith, family, and freedom. We will not compromise our principles, and we will not let our freedom slip away. With God as our guide and courage in our hearts, we will keep Texas and America free. May God bless you. May God forever bless the great state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Chad DeVries. I'm from Prescott, Arizona, and thank you for having me, Mr. Chair and senators. And I've been a licensed realtor in Arizona for over 30 years. I'm a proud father of 5 children and a grandfather of 6 and a stepfather of 4 teenage daughters, so I'm very busy. I was raised in northern Michigan, where I was taught the importance of respect, integrity, and doing what's right, values that have shaped both my personal life and my professional career. Throughout my career, I have sold hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate, building lasting relationships with my clients, and maintained a spotless professional record until recently receiving a complaint with the Realtor Board. Beyond my career, I've always made giving back to my community a priority. I was honored to receive a Community Steward Award from my peers at a previous real estate firm. Recognize my commitment for service. I'm also actively involved in organizations like Agape House, which helps homeless families transition back into stable housing and rebuild their lives. In 2023, I ran for a seat on Prescott City Council. It was a very challenging time. So, staying true to the same values that have guided me throughout my life. During the campaign, political tensions escalated and complaints were filed against me, not by clients, but by fellow realtors. This also has to do with 10-5 and the Code of Ethics. These are individuals in leadership positions with the Prescott Association of REALTORS and former business competitors. These were not clients, these were former realtors themselves. These complaints had nothing to do with my professional conduct. Instead, they targeted personal meme posts shared by my private Instagram account, which doesn't even have my name on it. It's under Dutch Boy 70 and something else on it. So I know this sounds funny, but I posted let me go back, Instagram account, posting expressing traditional beliefs such as a man can't have a baby, which I didn't realize until late, I guess, and another meme referencing Pride Month that didn't even create myself. These were personal posts shared privately among friends, having nothing to do with my work as a realtor. Let me be very clear. I have 2 gay children, both married to the same sex, and many gay clients who I deeply respect and consider my friends. My Christian conservative values do not diminish my love for others, and they absolutely do not equate to hate. Being told that I have forfeited my freedom of speech simply because I am a realtor, especially based on a private personal expression, is something I cannot and I will not accept. Having a different viewpoint should not make someone an enemy. Even those who filed the complaints admitted under oath that they had never seen me with hate, discrimination, or unprofessionalism towards anyone. I have friends that gave their lives defending the freedom we all enjoy. The very least I can do is stand up for the rights they died to protect, including the constitutional right to freedom of speech. If Arizona Association of REALTORS is successful in enforcing the punishment and fines they have imposed on me, a case I'm now actively fighting in court. I do have my attorney with me today, Ryan Heath. I will lose the ability to practice the profession I have devoted my life to for more than 30 years. I will lose access to the critical tools needed to operate my business, including the multiple listing service, effectively shutting down my livelihood. This hearing is not just about me. It's about protecting the rights of every professional in the country. If we allow free thought and free speech to be silenced, we will lose far more than a career. We will lose the very freedoms that make us who we are as Americans. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Wilson Fulber from the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. This is my first time in Texas, and it's a privilege to be here with you today, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about this very important matter. I have been a licensed realtor for 45 years, and I'm also an ordained minister. I ran, let me just give you a little background about my home life. My beautiful wife, Dr. Anita Fulber, is an educator. We have 2 wonderful daughters and sons-in-law and 7 grandchildren. I love practicing real estate, and I love ministry. I never thought I would be in a place where a complaint would be filed against me for posting a Bible verse on my personal social media. This is what happened to me. As a background, in 2023, I also ran for our local city council in Stanton, Virginia. As it turns out, because I ran as a conservative Republican, I did not bring religion into my campaign at all. But there were those who went back and did opposition research and found that in 2015, February of 2015, I had reposted a post by Reverend Franklin Graham, the son of Reverend Billy Graham. I put some emphasis on that, and that was related to Leviticus 18:22, which at that time was a big issue with the Supreme Court as to whether same-sex marriage would be allowed. And it wasn't posted in any hateful manner. It was just talking to my followers about Scripture, and as my position as an ordained minister, having served as a pastor in various capacities in the church, I posted this. Little did I know that 5.5 years later, this would be the centerpiece of a complaint filed against me through the Virginia Realtors by 2 people, 2 peers who had never met, never had any communication with them at all. And I found out 1 year ago that this complaint had been filed against me, and I had a spotless record. Spotless, serving my community for 45 years in this capacity. And this complaint was filed against me, charging me with hate speech for posting a scripture in 2015 on my personal Facebook Now, to move forward, I've been through the hearing process through the Virginia Realtors, which is a branch of the National Association of Realtors. This all has to do with this Article 10.5. And it really wasn't surprising to me because I think everything was stacked against me because of the information that I've received of what's happening to realtors across the United States. It's not just in Arizona, it's not just in Texas, it's not just in Virginia. The National Association of Realtors is the largest trade organization in America. And they adopted this policy in 2020, and it weaponized any individual, not just realtors, but any individual can file a complaint if they're offended by my speech or any other realtor's speech. And it's true, the National Association of Realtors has said that even as a pastor, if I stand behind a pulpit and I read a scripture that someone, even if they're not present, determines is offensive to them, a complaint can be filed against me for even reading a Bible verse in church or a Bible study. This is wrong. This is a far overreach that needs to be reined back in. My life has been devastated. My business is pretty much over after 45 years serving my community because of the targeted attacks against me, the hate speech that's been leveled against me, threats that's been leveled against me for posting scripture on my personal Facebook page, not in a business capacity. My life, my income is zilch. I have no closings this year. People aren't returning my phone calls, all because I've served my community and because this powerful organization has found me guilty of posting scripture. This has got to stop. This is wrong. And Texas has a big voice. Texas has a huge voice, and America is listening. And that's why I made the sacrifice to come here to Texas and be before you today, because you have a strong voice, and I hope that you will support this bill.
Thank you, Pastor. Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Get close to that microphone, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Good morning, members. Thank you for having me today. My name is Jamie Haynes. I'm from Canyon, Texas, and I'm representing myself, and I am for SB 2715. My husband and I have a real estate brokerage in the Texas Panhandle. We specialize in farm and ranch sales. We've been in business since roughly 2009, and we take great pride in delivering excellent customer service to anyone that knocks on our door. In fact, our logo is exceeding expectations for buyers and sellers. We are an independent brokerage, and so at the end of the day, it's our name on everything that we do. Shortly after we all came back from COVID, my kids were in school, and a mother in our community posted in a social media Facebook group what our children were reading in our freshman English class at Canyon High School. I had a freshman English that year. I basically ordered all the books, read them all, and was appalled. I essentially walked away from our business. I managed our team full-time, worked more than full-time, was obsessed with it, walked away, did not walk back into our business, and spent every waking moment researching what was going on in my school. I found a harmful sexuality education program, a harmful social emotional learning curriculum. I did a million book reviews, read so many book reviews, and launched a website called Texans Wake Up and published everything that I found. I also found a program, a mental health program, created by Lady Gaga, the music singer. It's a mental health program in which a child who is a female basically said she was a boy and said, you too can change your biological sex and become whatever you want. Just come forward, get help with your school, help from your school counselor, and you can change your sex. So at the next school board meeting, I bought about $300 or $400 worth of the books. I had tons of documentation on everything that I have found, and I spoke out against this mental health program. About a week after that, I received a complaint from my local Realtor Association, an ethics violation of 10.5. Had a hearing, was found guilty, appealed it, was all same result, was found guilty, and essentially had to pay a fine and take a class. Funny enough, I had to take a diversity class in which the whole class was basically promoting communism, socialism, equity across the board, and then we also had to, in group work, highlight who our favorite LGBT personality was in different segments, occupational segments within the culture in the United States. So again, violating my personal religious beliefs. I am in the unique position that I'm not the breadwinner of my family, and my husband so graciously allowed me to step away and take up advocacy work, which eventually ran for me running for office and getting more involved, because I could see firsthand that we were having our freedoms taken away from us, and I felt very passionate about protecting children in school, but not every person can do that. There's other realtors that are single mothers with children, and they will not be able to speak out and protect their children in the public forum. They're going to be silenced and censored. And so I'm so thankful that Brian and Senator Middleton have got this bill to this point. This has to be stopped. I never thought in America we would be censored and silenced for speaking up for what we believe in. So thank you for this hearing today, and please help pass this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Parker, you have the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, thank all of you for being here. Thank you for the sacrifice you've made to travel long distances and to tell us your personal stories. I think I speak for my colleagues when I tell you we are absolutely disgusted by what we're hearing. This is absolutely un-American. I'm saddened that we're having issues in our own Texas. And I absolutely appreciate you all recognizing the role that Texas will play.
Yes.
When we stand up, we pass this legislation, we'll do everything in our power to expedite it because we need to send a message.
That's right.
And the other states in America will follow Texas.
Yes.
Yep.
We've got to lead for liberty and freedom and make certain that this kind of egregious miscarriage of justice in all these states and in our own Texas isn't allowed any further. So I want to thank you for coming forward, all of you, and sharing so openly and candidly all that you've gone through, and I'm very sorry for all that you've suffered. A couple of questions specifically. I mean, I want to understand from the Texas perspective, but also Montana and Arizona and Virginia. I'd like to understand just for a moment, explain to me the process that supposedly, this real process that you had. So just a random individual complains, then you come before obviously this body. Just, would you elaborate on that for a moment, each of you, one of you, both of you maybe from Texas, but each of the other states. I just want to understand that, want everybody, the members to understand that, the public at large, because it sounds like it was a joke of a process, and I'd like to get your perspective on what really happened.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee member. For me, it was, we made that stance. The committee member or the community member filed a complaint with the ethics board. The weird thing in my situation was, in her complaint, she said, even though I don't have verifiable proof that he said this, it went to the ethics board. The ethics board still said, we're going to hear the case if it's true, even though there wasn't the evidence. So they then passed it on to the Professional Standards Committee, and it was at the Professional Standards Committee where I sat before my peers, found me guilty of hate speech, and then fined the $5,000, and was supposed to take that class, and I refused to do so.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today, and it was worth the sacrifice coming here because I really believe Texas is really going to help us out. I faced a similar thing. I had 4 realtors that submitted a complaint, verbatim, by the way. They copied each other's complaints, so it wasn't just separate complaints. It was one complaint copied by each one of them. One of them was the head of the association. Once they get a complaint like that, it is sent to the, I think it's Arizona Association of REALTORS, and then they send it out to review it and all that, and they choose different. There's a list of realtors that are part of the committees or whatever that will judge you on the merit of what was filed. So we ended up, I retained legal counsel at the time. My attorney, Ryan Heath, is here. And we went to the hearing. We we produced our evidence and everything, and I like Wilson said, the cards were stacked against me. There was no way. They were just there. No matter what we said, there was nothing. They found me guilty of hate speech for just different memes, like I shared with you earlier. And again, I was running for a city position, city council, non-political supposedly, so then we appealed that decision, and in the appeals, they still upheld the punishment for me for a $1,000 fine and taking a fair housing class. I did nothing wrong. I grew up with values, and like I said, I had friends die for this country, and at least I can do is fight from here, from the pulpit or whatever, the dais. And so now we're in a lawsuit right now in the Arizona Superior Court in Yavapai County, hoping to make change. I think I am one of the first lawsuits in the country, hoping to set some case law and precedents. So we're glad to be here, and I wouldn't miss this for the world, and I appreciate Texas listening to us.
Thank you for standing up, and I think that's another very important point, that you've incurred all this additional legal expense.
It's just nonstop, yeah.
And nonstop in this whole process.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. In my situation, well, let me get this out there. It's extremely important to be successful in the real estate business that you have access to the multiple listing service. Absolutely. The National Association of Realtors has a monopoly on the multiple listing services across the country. There are a few private entities, but by and large, the National Association of Realtors controls that. You cannot be a member of the MLS system unless you are a member, a realtor. And so we're forced to pay the local association, the state association, and the National Association. The National Association of Realtors has said that they are not subject to the Constitution of the United States because they are a private entity. And therefore, free speech does not apply.
Unbelievable.
It is a farce. It really is. So in my situation, it was 1 year ago today that I received notice that the complaint had been filed against me. It went through the process, as Brandon expressed, and the ethics and the professional standards. And when I went before, and here's the thing, the State Association of Realtors gets to choose who the panel is that's going to hear the complaint.
Yeah.
I had no say-so over that. Yeah. And when the deck was stacked against me when I went in there.
From the gate.
From the get-go,
yeah.
They weren't listening. They weren't paying attention to anything that I had to say or my three attorneys had to say. Their minds were made up that they were interpreting as this vague 10-5 policy allows them to do, that yes, that is indeed hate speech.
Just stacked out of the gate. I mean, you must wonder if we're even still in America anymore in the Commonwealth of Virginia to have this kind of nonsense.
It's just unbelievable that this is happening in America.
It's disgusting.
And in Texas and in Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. Thank you for sharing that.
So my complaint was filed against me by the counselor that taught the mental health program at my public school district. So I very much felt like they were, was using lawfare to silence me. And again, I love our public schools, and I'm passionate about making them better, and I've dedicated myself to that at this point. But from an education standpoint, we need to think about, can we let our educators, retaliate against parents in this way? And then back as far as the process of the hearings, I'm with the other gentleman. They already had their mind made up. I worked really hard on my position and my case and what I said, and I don't think it mattered at all, particularly in the appeal hearing. And so there was no, and even with my local board, I wasn't in on their decision at the board meeting in Amarillo, but, they said yes, and so it went on up the line. Whether they felt forced to do that because they were under the ruling of the association and under this ethics code, which, by the way, us as realtors, we never voted for the change in the ethics. We don't get a vote. We don't get a say. I don't know, like the other gentleman, I didn't even know that this had rolled out. I was completely unaware of it until the complaint was filed against me. So, yeah, just pretty unbelievable that this is out there and happening, and it can be used against citizens in the United States. And like I said, this could be used for, plumbers, anybody that has some kind of a certification. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. Well, very grateful to all of you. I think Senator Middleton has an excellent bill, and we'll work hard to get it out of here quickly. Thank you all very much for being here.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Senator Perry, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, similar to, I think I filed ABA bill for a couple of sessions, and everybody said, oh, it never happens. This could never happen. You don't need this bill. Well, it's happening in the realtor. So where were you from, sir? Are you? Yes.
Austin.
You're in Austin. So 2 Texas realtors. I would guess Texas realtors are one of the biggest memberships in the National Association. So you said your local realtor board approved the complaint so it would go up, and I would assume yours in Austin would probably not only vote for it to go up, but probably embraced it. But am I correct in understanding the MLS is 100% proprietary to the national?
It's not 100%, it's probably 97. I don't know what the percentage is, but by and large, it's only a few private MLS systems, and they have a heavy thumb that they put on the.
Well, I wish there was a Texas Realtor Association person at the state level in here to hear why they feel compelled to sanction individual realtors throughout, but that's not here today. You know, we have a pretty active attorney general, and this is definitely impacting the livelihood of individuals in the state over a specific individual right and liberty, as well as economics in Texas. If this MLS system is being held as a hostage taker for us to do commerce in one of the most, arguably probably the most active market in the country, and has been and will be for the next foreseeable future, then maybe there's some play there to provide some injunctive or immediate relief so that you don't have to wait for your states to get on board. But we need to pursue some of this, and I'm disappointed that in Canyon, Texas, I'm from Lubbock, so things are different than what they were 43 years ago than when I lived there, but it's kind of insidious how this stuff is beginning to pop up and hold people at hostage. So I think we'll talk about the AG piece. If they're a nonprofit, there are certain rules in order to keep that exemption. I would encourage you to talk to Jody Arrington and Ronnie Jackson. Those are the 2 representatives up in your area. You've got your federal guys, but I think they need to be made aware of some of the membership requirements and the 100% monopoly on a tool that everybody's dependent on. And then there's some, I think, opportunity for a very enterprising entrepreneur to develop their own MLS system and make it available for states that choose to go a different path. So those are some suggestions, but I do think the AG may, hopefully, if they're paying attention, listen to the hearing today, maybe they'll find a vehicle to stop some of this nonsense until we can get a permanency to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perry. Senator Birdwell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's just unconscionable what we've heard today. I mean, it's the mark of the beast kind of stuff, except it's the National Realtors Association. Let me ask a couple of questions, if I may, and I didn't catch everybody's name, but I think you, sir, and you, ma'am, are both from Texas, but I got Montana, Arizona, and Virginia.
Correct.
Okay. Am I correct on Texas? I didn't?
Texas.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is Article 10 rule, is that a state rule, or is that where's that coming from in the article? That
The 10.5.
I try to listen to you instead of read what you're handing me.
The Code of Ethics is with the National Association of Realtors, but then the Texas Association also adopted the same thing. Is that accurate?
Okay, so is the state association an appendage of the federal, or does it make its own decisions and chooses to associate with the national?
You have the national, state, and then local organizations that all follow the NAR Code of Ethics.
Right, but I guess what I'm trying to get to is are the states associations created by the national under a national charter, or is there a degree of separation and the state association simply chosen to follow a national recommendation, but is not compelled to follow a national recommendation? Or because they were created by the national, are they compelled to follow a national association?
No, someone that can answer that is my attorneys in the back, is if he could come up, Ryan Heath. He knows, he can explain that better than any of us, I think.
Would that be okay, Mr. Chairman?
He's on the next panel, Senator Burgess, so we'll come back to that when he comes
Okay,
up.
sure.
Okay, so you'll be up, okay. I believe that starts at the NAR and then we breaks down to the states, goes down to the local level. Like in Arizona, I'm part of Scottsdale and Phoenix Board Association. And then I have to be a part of another one in Prescott, Arizona. There's so many different ones, but they all fall under the umbrella of the Arizona Association and the bigger umbrella, the Big Daddy NAR. So,
Okay. Okay.
If you're going to use the name Realtor,
yes.
Say that again, sir?
if you're going to use the trade name Realtor, you have to subscribe to everything that National
Or MLS.
Right.
and MLS.
In the bill, it contemplates a private cause of action for those that, should it pass, what's happened to y'all now have a private cause of action against the realtors. Are either of my Texas residents, is there anything other than, excuse me, is there anything other than the licensing and your certification as a realtor? Are either one of y'all in a civil action as a defendant right now from the associations or anybody else?
So at the time that this happened, I actually contacted Alliance Defending Freedom and see if they would take up our case. Mine happened quite a bit earlier than the rest of the panel, and so this was right after COVID, and they were just being inundated with people who were losing their jobs because they didn't get vaccinated. So they just said, we can't take it on right now. We did visit a local attorney. He basically quoted 100 to 200,000. I was fixing to have a child in college, and we ended up spending money more towards me running for office. I thought I could maybe be more effective that way. So I didn't ever file a suit.
Right, but I don't mean that you filed suit, but are you defending yourselves in a civil suit beyond defending yourselves related to your licensing?
No.
I'm not a victim of this. I'm a free speech advocate.
Okay. Now, what I'm trying to get to, Mr. Chairman, with Senator Middleton stepped away, you might have to answer this question. You can't pass ex post facto laws that make something a crime retroactively. But if this passes, does it vacate any civil suits, kind of like what the Attorney General's opinion, what the TEC did? I know the Attorney General's opinion is different than a bill, but it vacated much of what the Ethics Commission was doing in violation of statute. It vacated those suits. Would this have the ability to vacate anything that is currently litigation against people defending themselves under this type of circumstance?
I see what you mean, Senator, and I'm not sure about the language of this bill. As you know, when bills are going to have that kind of an effect, we have to make tick off a couple of boxes to do that, but we certainly can. As you know, the legislature can pass a law saying that certain agreements or requirements are unenforceable as a matter of public policy. When we do it that way, yes, sir, it stops everything. So we need to look at the specific language in here, but we definitely have the power to do that.
Yeah, because I think we need to, in some way, while I would want going forward anybody to have a private cause of action, but are there those actions occurring against these private citizens that we need to revisit in the rearview mirror? And we probably need to have that conversation with Senator Middleton. So let me just encourage each of you that in listening to just what is just un-American. Keep preaching the word, Pastor.
Thank you.
The Lord tells us, we'll be hated for that reason.
Yes.
The Lord's grace is free, at least to us. It wasn't to him, but living in a free country and freedom of conscience is not as free as it should be.
Right.
So God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's also real quick important for the committee to know that, we have a small panel here that's before you. We've all had legal counsel and obtained legal counsel. We don't know how many are out there. that are not speaking, one, for afraid of losing their livelihood, or two, you know, they tried to silence us, but because we had legal counsel, went through the steps, that's how we're able to sit here today. So we don't know how many are out there. So when you guys talk about retroactive, how many that will actually affect.
Thank you, Pastor. Senator Perry, you're
Yeah, I'd
recognized.
just say it's going to take a collective effort of everybody around the state and this country, and you guys need to band together and find you a group of attorneys that support freedom of speech, religious liberties, those kind of conversations. Some of them will do it for minimum, some of them will do it for free, some of them charge, but you need to band together and take it on as an initiative and hit them with salt. You need to quit playing defense, be very offensively, and then you will end up, unfortunately, the way this has transpired, because I know how it works, you basically pay local dues, the locals pay state dues go to the national. You don't necessarily have to be a part of them to sell real estate, but you probably should be if you're going to be successful. So they own it. They have, as you say, weaponized the only tool in your toolbox that you need. So all of those factors together, you need to be in a group. You need to be very aggressive, and you need to take them on. And then you need to ask your local why you're being included in a lawsuit, your state, why it's spending money on a lawsuit that probably on a fundamental level, I would be safe to say the majority of the membership does not support, and they should have ran that rule adoption at the state level through its membership. So first level of defense was your state membership, because this is kind of how we break up some of these conversations in the state of Texas. So Texas Realtors should have brought to its members a vote that said, this is what we're proposing to be adopted, and said no. And if Texas had said no, I don't think that the national would have booted the real estate people out of the state. So there is leverage in dollars, numbers, and volumes, and you got to be smarter than the group that is doing this, because to date, sounds like they've gotten a free pass.
Thanks, Senator Perry. Members, anything else for this panel?
Yes, I'd just like to add, not only was I found in violation or charged with hate speech, they levied a second charge against me because I spoke publicly, because I was part of this. It was a second charge. What the article says is that you cannot discuss what takes place in the hearing. And because I spoke publicly that this had been filed against me, they levied a second charge because they want to keep everything in secret, in darkness, that other people do not know. And so I got a second charge for speaking to the media and saying that a complaint had been filed against me.
Senator Parker.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, the whole thing, I mean, we're all outraged here on this table, but I mean, it really is no different than what we talk about the CCP doing, for heaven's sake, right, with the social contract score. And it's just absolutely disgusting. I think, you know, Chairman Birdwell made a very good point earlier too, Mr. Chairman, with regard to making certain that not only do we address with this legislation, working with Senator Middleton in his office, that we not only address it going forward, but all these individuals that have been wronged, that we make certain that there is restitution for them here in Texas, and certainly understanding that it will be a model for the rest of the country.
Yes.
And so when
Amen.
Yes.
Montana and Virginia and Arizona adopt it, and let me just say this, I know I speak for my colleagues as well, we have many good friends that are like-minded in each of your states.
Yeah.
We will make certain that when we pass this good legislation, we get them moving in as well. So,
Yes.
So appreciate you all being here.
Thank you so
We
much.
want-
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It is one thing for a private organization to say, based on their own freedom of association, these are our terms of membership, and if you're going to join our club, you have to meet these things, and if you say bad things about our club, we're going to kick you out. That's one thing. That's freedom of association. That's free speech. That's protected. However, when that association has this kind of monopoly power and can control your livelihoods, that's not acceptable, and this will not stand. So thank you each for your testimony. Thank you
Thank
for
you
being
so
here.
much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Thank you.
Senator Hall.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's ridiculous that Texas was not represented here by the Realtors Association. And since we're probably going to leave this bill pending, I'd like for you to consider subpoenaing them and have them come talk to us before we've got time here, but I think the public needs to hear from them directly. And if they won't show up on their own, I think we do have subpoena power to have them come in here and explain this and help us understand how they can work with us to rectify this situation that they have, let's say, bended a knee to the national level. Let's say, assuming they don't necessarily agree to it, but whatever it is. But I would like to hear from them.
Senator, that's a great point. And as you know, you've been involved in each time we've done it. Normally, we will issue an invitation reminding the invited person that the committee does have subpoena power. Normally, that invitation's enough. So I'm with you. Let's start with that, and I'll work with you. This discussion needs to be had. You're right, Senator. Thank you.
And if you could also ask them how many other people have violations filed surrounding 10.5, and let that be discovered as well, that would be lovely.
Very good. Thank each of you. We do have more testimony on this bill, but we thank each one of you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Especially some of you came a long way. You've all taken risks, and thank you for letting us know. Thank you for letting us know, Pastor, that you're also being punished for being a whistleblower. Sunshine. I didn't come up with this. It's often quoted. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. And when somebody's against that, we should be real nervous about that. So thank you each for being here. You're excused.
Thank you.
The chair now calls Ryan Heath, Leah Talley, Mary Elizabeth Castle. Public testimony is open, and if anyone else wishes to testify on, for, or against, well, the chair calls Virginia Kettler as well, thanks. And public testimony is open. If anyone else wishes to testify on, for, or against, please make your way here and let us know. We're looking for Ryan Heath, Leah Talley, Mary Elizabeth Castle, there she is, Virginia Kettler. Mr. Heath, introduce yourself. Welcome. Give us your testimony.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Ryan Heath, and I am Chadwick DeVries' attorney. We are currently in litigation against the Arizona Association of REALTORS because, as my client stated, he posted content to his personal social media accounts, and he was disciplined, basically taking away his free speech rights because he simply wanted to express his opinion on a matter of political concern and social concern. So I just want to clarify a few things. I know there were some questions asked earlier, and I can jump into that a little bit later as well. But first, this bill should be focusing on organizations that create an economic necessity through their membership. We're not concerned about religious organizations excluding individuals. We're really concerned about organizations like the State Bar, the State Medical Board, the Texas Association of REALTORS, et cetera, discriminating against people because they happen to disagree with what they're saying online. Now, what's important to understand here is that the way this works is there is a code of ethics, there is a constitution, and there are bylaws adopted by each of these state associations. Now, the code of ethics, Article 10, states, and I'm going to paraphrase, that a realtor cannot discriminate against anyone based on enumerated characteristics in their professional services or their employment practices. It says nothing about discriminating against folks or engaging in speech online in the Code of Ethics. Now, there is a group within the National Association of Realtors called the Professional Standards Committee. These people, per the Constitution, per all of the governing documents of the NAR, have zero authority to amend the Code of Ethics. They exist to provide explanations, opinions on interpretations of the Code of Ethics. They don't have the right to create law or contractual obligations for realtors. Now, what happened here is in 2020, there was a group of individuals within the National Association of Realtors who pushed this standard of practice 10.5, which again has no bearing on the Code of Ethics. It's an interpretation, it's an opinion. And what that said is basically a realtor can be punished for engaging in speech in any capacity. It doesn't have to be tied to their professional services. It doesn't have to be tied to their employment practices. So it's actually antithetical to the Code of Ethics. And I actually would like to also talk about myself as a professional. I am an attorney. I have had complaints filed against me for speaking at school board meetings in various states. I actually had the State Bar of California threaten to have me arrested for speaking at a school board meeting a few years ago. Luckily, I sent them a cease and desist notice, and I haven't heard from them since. But the threat still remains, and it's preventing people that are professionals from engaging in free speech and having a debate of ideas, which is paramount to our freedoms as Americans. So I urge all of you to vote in favor of this bill. And I'm happy to answer questions about the process, explain what happens when an ethics complaint is filed against a realtor. If you have any questions about that, I can go through that later.
And thank you for your testimony. And Ms. Castle, welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead. Welcome back.
Good morning, Chairman Hughes and members of the committee. My name is Mary Elizabeth Castle, and I'm Director of Government Relations for Texas Values. We're one of the largest state organizations that represents religious liberty in the state of Texas, and we're very happy that a supporter came to us with this particular issue with the 10-5 rule and how it's impacting even people in the state of Texas, even though you've heard many stories today about how many realtors in other states have faced economic harm due to this rule. Free speech should extend to American citizens who are members of an association or accredited institution, so long as their members adhere to governmental licensing and legal standards. The National Association of REALTORS, NAR, instituted a hate speech rule that restricts speech in the lives of realtors, even in their private lives, that may offend someone based on sexual orientation, gender identity, or even an insult. The LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance has actively pushed to enforce this rule and extend its application. They have called for actions against realtors who engage in what they consider hate speech, notably in cases involving religious expressions that are considered as discriminatory against the LGBTQ community. Today, you've heard many stories of real estate professionals who express their sincerely held religious beliefs on marriage and sexuality in their own time, away from their job as realtors, and were subsequently punished. However, the majority of realtors must access the MLS to have access to the listing and sold data to serve their customers effectively, and losing access to the MLS due to an association's speech policy violation has ended a member's career because the member did not comply with fines and other requirements. At Texas Values, we collect many stories about how people's religious liberty can be infringed upon in the professional setting. You've heard us talk about different bills for counselors or attorneys. But this particular instance is very unique because not only is this a deprivation of speech, but it's also heckler's veto, as it could lead to realtors spying on other social media posts, finding sermons or speeches that a realtor has given in the past or some other public forum to have that realtor lose their access to the MLS. So we're very supportive of this bill. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your testimony. Thanks for being here. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Leah Talley, and I'm 14 years old. I'm here today representing myself with the support of my father, Brian Talley, a real estate broker in Austin. I would like to briefly speak about the importance of protecting free speech with professional associations and why I believe we should support Senate Bill 2713, authored by Senator Middleton. Professional association groups that serve doctors, attorneys, real estate professionals, and others play a vital role in helping individuals excel in their fields and serve their communities. However, sometimes these organizations impose rules that may discourage members from expressing their beliefs about their professions, communities, or faith. I have learned that some people are afraid to speak up even when they are respectful and within their rights. This is not fair. Free speech means everyone should be able to share their views without fear of retaliation. Open dialogue strengthens professional organizations and, in turn, benefits all Texans. Senate Bill 2713 ensures that professional associations cannot exclude members based on race, religion, or the lawful expressions of ideas. It also provides a path for individuals to seek justice if their rights are violated. Free speech belongs to everyone, Republicans, Democrats, independents, children like me, and adults alike. It protects all voices and keeps Texas a place where ideas and benefits can be shared openly and respectfully. Thank you for your time and for considering Senate Bill 2713. Let's work together to protect free speech for all Texans.
Thank you, Ms. Talley, for your testimony. Thank you for being here. Welcome. Now, since you're on the end, you got to get close to the microphone and introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Virginia Kettler. I'm a broker, real estate broker in College Station, Texas. And so I thought we needed an Aggie perspective as well. And I'm actually here because I've gotten to know Wilson just, long distance, and I didn't even know I'd be able to speak, so excuse me if I'm not particularly eloquent. But I do obviously have an opinion about it, and I'm in favor also of 2713. And I had something happen to me last fall. Just briefly, I'm the past president of the Better Business Bureau, I'm the past president of our local Realtor Association, I'm the past board member of our MLS, I'm the past national president of the Purchasing Association. I was a purchasing agent in my former life. I was president of the Better Business Bureau. So I've done a lot of things like that. I won't bore you with all of that, but just to let you know, I've been around a while, and I'm a lot older than I look. But anyway, I was in a class. I was actually in an NAR ethics class last fall. And so I had a question. So I asked the question, and it pertained to, would it be ethical if I said that, if I wrote this to NAR that I have a problem with what they're requiring, would that be an ethics violation? And so we just kind of talked back and forth with the instructor. It was a question. 2 weeks later, I got a letter of reprimand from the local association because I asked the question, and it was offensive to some members that were in the class. Now, I wasn't sanctioned per se, but basically what the letter said was, if you continue with this kind of speech, we'll have to take further action because you need to be inclusive of all people. And honestly, was quite stunned by the letter because I didn't exclude anyone. I was simply asking a question in a class. And it made me very concerned for the future, honestly, of free speech. And so I actually asked, I prayed about it and told the Lord, I really would like to pursue this. And so I still have not written a letter in response for different reasons. But in the meantime, I found out about Wilson here. And I'm here to just take a stand for free speech. I'm here to say, if we don't stand for something as minor as a letter written, and I happened to meet with the lady that wrote it, what will we stand for? And, it's hard to get up here and even do this. I'm not used to doing this, even though I'm used to being in public. But, the policies of the Realtor Association, whether it's local, state, or national, should not impact our free speech. And I'm reiterating what's already been said here.
Thank you.
But I did want to comment. I Googled it a minute ago. We have 1.6 million approximately realtors in the U.S. Of that, about 1.5 belong to NAR. So that puts it in perspective. It's pretty small, 100,000 out of 1.6 that actually don't belong. Why? Most of those people that don't belong are commercial realtors, or they do things other than residential is a big part of that.
Thank you.
We don't
Thank
have
you
a
for your
choice.
testimony.
We really don't
Thank
have
you
a
for being
choice.
here. Thank you for your testimony. Members, we are going to have to break so that the furniture can be rearranged for the session. And so we thank each of you for being here. We will still be on this bill when we come back. There are some more witnesses. And so we're going to close public testimony for now, leave the bill pending for now, but we will bring this bill back up when the Committee on State Affairs comes back after the legislative session. Very well. Thank you each for being here. And if there's no other business for the committee stands in recess subject to the call of the chair. Good morning. Good afternoon. The Committee on State Affairs will come to order. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business to Senate Bill 2713. You'll recall that's the bill we were hearing at the time we had to stand in recess so that the Senate could come back in. We'll reopen public testimony on Senate Bill 2713, and the chair calls Sheila Hemphill, Dr. Susan Carranza, Julia Parenteau, David Jones, Aaron Walter. So we're looking for Sheila Hemphill, Dr. Susan Carranza, Julia Parenteau, David Jones, Aaron Walter. Those are the only witnesses we have registered to testify, remaining witnesses we have registered to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2713. If anyone else wishes to testify, please make your way down so that we can recognize you. And welcome. Thank you each for being here. And so do y'all want to take questions, or do you have some prepared testimony, or both?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. If I may, I'll just say a couple of words to start, but then I think we're here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Go ahead and introduce yourself. You know how to do this. Welcome. Go ahead. Thanks.
Yes, sir. My name is Julia Parento. I'm the Director of Policy for Texas Realtors. We are here today neutrally on the bill. We were not actually here earlier today because we were neutral on the bill and we were testifying in another hearing, so apologies for that. We did not realize that y'all would have so many questions, but we want to be responsive to this committee and to the Senate, of course. And so we are here to answer any questions you may have of us. And also just to reinforce again that we are neutral on the proposal.
Very good. And introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent.
Good afternoon. My name is David Jones. I am Chief Operating Officer with Texas Realtors. Previously, before that, I was Deputy General Counsel, part of the legal team with Texas Realtors, and I oversaw our professional standards department, so I'm well versed in our ethics complaint process. And I'm here, I understand there was some testimony earlier that raised some questions about our policies and our procedures, and I'm here to clear any misunderstandings up.
Thank you both for being here. I know earlier Senator Birdwell had a question about the relationship, and I'm going to recognize each member, of course, with questions. Senator Birdwell was asking about the relationship between the National Association and the state and local associations. With Senator Birdwell's permission, I'll throw that at, then I'll yield.
Sure. Happy to, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Question I asked earlier today that couldn't get answered to specificity because y'all weren't with us yet. Is the state version or the state's chapter, I don't know if that's the right term, is the State Realtors Association a creation of the National Association?
Well,
or is the state creation its own creation that affiliates with the national creation?
Thank you. Great question, Senator. We are all independent organizations.
Independent of what?
We do have to have a charter with the National Association of Realtors. They own the trademark Realtor. So we have a charter with the National Association of Realtors where we agree to abide by certain policies.
But independent of what? Are you independent of the National Association?
We are our own legal entity. So we are set up under Texas law as a 501c3.
C3 or C4? C6.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'll use the word you used, independent, that you are your own separate creation, but affiliated. If the state agency, or not agency, the state association, because of its independence from the national, do you have the ability to, and I don't know if you heard the testimony this morning, do you have the ability, the discretion, authority, whatever the right word is, that if someone expresses a policy position, public political position that is on their own personal social media, that's not in conjunction with their licensing structure, do y'all have the ability to disregard the federal requirements that potentially, based upon the testimony we heard this morning, that in other states and there were two individuals from Texas that said their licenses were seeking to be revoked administratively by the state's agency, state association, because of the national standard and national charter. Do you have the ability to say no to the national folks when they're wrong on aspects related to right of conscience, and the ability to earn a living and support family, because the issue here is if you've got people that are licensed as realtors that risk their livelihood by virtue of a right of conscious decision, we have serious issues. So what's the proper response, or what's the correct exacting response?
There is sort of a mix. There are certain policies from the National Association of Realtors that are mandatory for all associations to follow.
Now, if they're mandatory, that doesn't sound like you're independent.
As being a realtor association, we are required to follow certain policies from the National Association. Beyond that, as long as they don't conflict, each association can have their own policies as long as they're not conflicting. One of those policies is the Code of Ethics. That's probably
say it again?
The Code of Ethics.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest, set of rules that all realtors have. That is a national code. So each association, whether it's a state or a local association, they don't get to pick and choose that code. Like someone doesn't get to pick and choose which laws they're going to follow. That is the Code of Ethics for all realtors. If you call yourself a realtor.
When you say laws, you've now gone from association to government. Because an association has a charter, but when you say what laws they will choose to follow, we're now in the governmental lane. Are you aware of any states that provide the protections to right of conscience that Texas is contemplating in this bill? I don't know if you've seen the bill, but
Mr.
Are there other
If I may
states
answer that. We are looking. I don't know yet of any other state that has legislation they're contemplating this way. We are looking to gather that, but we just started looking at it today, so we'll certainly report back if we can find that information. I think also that if I may expand on what David was saying as far as our Code of Ethics, I want to clarify one thing. First and foremost is that the Realtors Association is a professional association, and we do not have agency, that's a pun, over someone's real estate license. The State Real Estate Commission deals with real estate licenses. We do not. So we only deal with our own association membership and the standards thereof. And I'm going to look to David to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in some spaces, maybe what you're asking where we do have discretion is all of our realtor members, anyone who wants to call themselves a realtor, when they sign up for that, they do say, I will abide by this Code of Ethics. But the professional standards process, at least in Texas, is handled at the state association level. So when a complaint is filed internally, again, that's not on your license, but on your member action, that goes through our process. And then we have a very thorough process that those complaints go through, and there is discretion, I think, on those parties to determine the outcome of any complaint process.
Does because now you're dealing with, because I'm very familiar with the Real Estate Commission. They're at the time, when we had them under sunset, they were an SDSI, but they're no longer an SDSI.
So they still are.
Are they the ones that are the authority for revoking somebody's license, or, hold on, listen to me, or prohibiting the ability to be on the MLS if they have not followed the association charter that in doing so renders them impotent to earn a living as a realtor? Because the testimony today wasn't about the Realty Commission. It was about the Realtors Association. And I'm trying to bifurcate who has responsibility for what. And if the Code of Ethics that you have has an ethical problem with prohibiting individuals' right of conscience and actions that the association can take, preclude that individual based upon your judgment or disagreement with their right of conscience from being able to earn a living, we have a serious problem, and that's not the Realty Commission's issue, that's the Real Estate Association's, Realtors Association issue.
Code of Ethics does not prohibit religious freedom, doesn't restrict religious freedom in any way. The Code of Ethics, it's not that long, has 16 articles. And one of those is our Article 10, which is basically a fair housing article. Just like, federal has their Fair Housing Act, Texas has their Fair Housing Act. Right. The Realtor Association has a mini Fair Housing Act just for our members, so that if one of our members is doing something, saying something that is, discriminating against someone based off of the protected classes, similar to federal protected classes, then we can take action against that. But it is strictly limited to fair housing. We have no intent to regulate religious speech in any way. It is about, are you discriminating against someone based off of a protected class?
Based upon the testimony of the two individuals from Texas, that's happening with the lady that was here testifying this morning. If the state of have you seen the legislation?
Yes.
We have.
The state of Texas passes that, what will be your obligation to the National Association?
We still have to comply with the Code of Ethics. However, there's always a provision that a state law or a federal law will control. So
Well, the reason I ask, and I ask you with the greatest of respect and courtesy, is this bill passes, gets to the governor, and he signs it. I don't want the Real Estate Association to play stump the chump with the state.
Excuse me?
I don't want the Realtors Association to get cute with the state.
Okay.
Because the prospect that individuals' right of conscience, because I can have profound disagreement with different entities, different people on policy positions, but leveraging private association affiliation to render the right of earning a living and income and leveraging that is un-American. The testimony that we heard today is un-American. I'm not casting an aspersion against y'all, because anybody can come in here and say anything. But I want to make sure that if the state contemplates this, that the National Association can give you recommendations, but state law will be dominant. Do you have any concern with the statement I've made here about state law being dominant?
Well, that is what we operate under today, is that state law, federal law is going to control. I would like, Senator, if I could just read for 2 seconds the Article 10 and what it says. Realtors shall not deny equal professional services to any person for reasons of race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Realtors shall not be parties to any plan or agreement to discriminate against a person based off of these protected classes. Right. That is the rule that we're talking about, is do not discriminate against people.
Based upon the testimony we heard today, I don't think any of the realtors that were here had done what you had said. But in them expressing a disagreement with definition of marriage, some other cultural, moral truth based upon their religious conscience that they had expressed in a private post, personal email, whatever it may be, was then leveraged against them by the association, whether it was Arizona, Montana, Virginia, the lady here from Texas. So I want to make sure that we are precise, that an individual's right to conscience is being protected because disagreement with a policy that you don't act upon is not a terminable offense. Disagreement's not disloyalty. Acting on the disagreement is. And the individuals that testified today did not, according to their testimony, did not act upon that disagreement, but in expressing the personal conscience of the disagreement, that was leveraged against them to deprive them of a livelihood.
So, Chairman Birdwell,
we don't, hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
And we don't want to see that kind of a Stalinistic worldview imposed on the people of the state of Texas. So, floor is yours.
Sir. We certainly hear what you're saying, and I think it's worth clarifying here. And again, I'll look to Mr. Jones to expand upon this. But we have not had a complaint filed in Texas that has gone through our professional standards that has been based on religious or freedom of expression, in which any limitation of association access has been handed down. So I want to make that very clear. And I know you heard some testimony from some other states. We can't speak to their process for professional standards, but in Texas, that has not happened.
I'm not asking you to speak to the other states, because I know you're Texas, but we had two individuals. One was more specific to the realtor license than the other individual was, but her story was similar to Montana, Virginia, and Arizona.
So I would like to point out that we have a very rigorous process. You know, we're not flipping a coin here. We're not throwing darts at a dartboard to determine if somebody is in violation. I brought this here. This is our manual. This is basically our procedural manual on how to deal with a complaint. Okay, it gives step-by-step instructions on what happens when someone files a complaint. And we have, you know, very quickly, we have basically a three-step process. We have like what we call it a grievance tribunal. It's basically like a grand jury. Just kind of make sure a complaint has a legitimate basis. Then we hold a hearing where members have a right to an attorney if they choose to. They give testimony, they provide their evidence and their witnesses. They have plenty of notice of what the charges are, what the complaint is, what the allegations are. And then if they still feel that something unfair was done, then they can do an appeal. And each one has 3 separate groups of people. So in order for one of our members to actually be found in violation of denying equal access, fair housing, it has to go through all 3 procedures, all 3 groups. We are very confident that, you know, in the end, someone may file a complaint based off of a disagreement, a religious disagreement, but in order for it to get all the way through the end process, we're confident that the person was heard, that they had a right to defend themselves. And in my experience, I find that when someone recounts what happened, you're not hearing the whole story.
Well,
and that there are often facts left out that if someone talks about, okay, well, this is what I said, and I was found in violation of a realtor rule, well, the real story, which they had the opportunity to testify on, the real story was much more involved than what is being heard.
Solomon says in Proverbs 4, he who speaks first seems wisest till the second comes and examines him. That doesn't mean the second's always right, but it means you got to hear both sides of the story. So you're absolutely correct. So I don't know all the totality of everything that we got told today, but that can also apply to the association, not just who the association may seek a administrative ruling against. So I want to make sure that we're protecting the rights of those that are in your association, that if they have a conscience question, particularly in the political arena or cultural arena, that right of conscience is being respected and not being leveraged against them. An association action is occurring for a private conscience question. So.
Senator, we have members of all walks of life. All call themselves realtors, all races, all religions. Obviously, everybody's going to disagree on some things. But the code, which all of them agree that they will comply to, says that they need to provide equal equal professional service to everybody, regardless of your differences. And if someone files a complaint, it goes through our rigorous process to ensure that every member, regardless of their political background, regardless of their religious background, gets a fair shot.
Thank you.
Every single time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging my time frame.
Thank you, Senator Bardwell. Senator Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming. Did you hear this morning's testimony?
Not all of it. We heard some of it,
You had
but
some
we
of it,
were
but some of it was probably described to you.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Pardon?
heard some really appalling, downright disgusting testimony about what was happening. But granted, some of that was from other states. But their excuse that was in there was it was required of them to do this by the National Association. And I recognize what you say about the book and about not discriminating and dealing with property and this and that and the other when you're dealing with someone interested in buying or selling. What we heard was action being taken against people for what they said, completely out of the real estate environment. Nothing to do with showing property, listing property, talking about property, nothing at all. But as Senator Birdwell said, it was merely expressing their opinion on something. And what we were told was that the state there had come down on them because it was required by the National Association to do so. Do you agree with that? If you had with someone who was speaking from the pulpit, one of them was a pastor speaking in the pulpit, lost his real estate license because of the sermon he preached that Sunday. Has that ever happened here in Texas?
Absolutely not.
It has not happened.
Do you see any way it could possibly happen in Texas?
Well,
Knowing the national rules and what you're supposed to adhere to because you're associated with the national organization, could that happen here in Texas?
I think that would be very, very fact specific. And the National Association of Realtors, when this rule was talked about and discussed and debated, they came up with some very clear guidelines about, what is a potential violation. And I think what they were trying to get across is saying that, you can't discriminate against somebody regardless of where you are. So if I'm wearing a realtor hat today, I can't say I'm not going to rent or sell my house to a black person. I cannot take my hat off and then put my hat over there and say, I'm not going to rent to a black person. Oh, you can't touch me because I don't have my realtor hat on. Discrimination is discrimination regardless of where it happens. But it has to rise to the level of discriminating, denying equal professional services to somebody. It is not simply just you said something that somebody disagreed with while you were preaching. That's not going to trigger it. It's what is actually said, regardless of where you are when you say it. It still has to rise to the level of, okay, what you're saying now equals you're denying professional services to somebody.
And that comes from the national organization. What benefit does Texas gain from being part of a national organization that dictates what we would do here in Texas? What is the benefit to the citizens of Texas?
So I believe the code of ethics, if, obviously we don't have time, if we go through the code of ethics, it creates a very high standard for real estate professionals in how they behave.
But I'm asking if what happened, we heard in the testimony this morning from multiple people, none of which were in the situation of showing property, selling property. There was strictly in personal actions taken outside of the real estate arena. It was just completely. but the testimony was that the state took action against them because the National Association required that they take that action.
I would say that the Code of Ethics requires certain actions. The Code of Ethics requires all realtors to provide equal professional services, regardless of what state you're in. Now, you might get some differences depending on the actual facts of the case in one state from another. As Julia said, we haven't had that issue in Texas, and I am not familiar with the individual facts of other states, of other cases that have occurred.
Mr. Chairman, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Go ahead.
I was going to add to the Code of Ethics is broader than just this article, I think, that we're talking about here today. It also requires professional interactions between realtors. It requires them to act professionally with the public. It makes sure that they don't lie and mistreat anyone, and to be honest. And this is something that the Realtors Association really was founded on over 100 years ago. Was the group of realtors that really started this whole thing and trademarked that term wanted to make sure that they, as a professional association, were holding each other to a high standard. This was before we had a lot of state laws around real estate, but back then, that's what they were trying to do, and that underpinning of professional service is really what bolsters the Realtor Association all around. So it goes beyond just the fair housing issue, why we have all sort of made this agreement to work professionally together.
No, and I think that's good. I mean, honesty and ethical behavior really is not inappropriate in any situation. And it's good when that's required. It should be expected in a culture. And I understand we don't always have it. But what we heard really didn't have anything to do with honesty. It didn't have anything to do with the principles of real estate, the principles of accurately describing property, or associated financial transactions, or anything at all to that. It was simply expressing an opinion from a pulpit, and they lost their license. And I guess our concern is that that's not the kind of thing we would expect to have in Texas. And the question is, what do we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen? And to answer the question, has it happened?
No.
It has not.
And I'll just reiterate again, I don't know how other states operate, but for Texas Association of Realtors is a private professional association. We do not have the ability to take anyone's license away.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Senator Hall. Senator Parker, you're recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you all being here, and I think one of the things that took us all back is that we all have such a wonderful relationship with our great realtors in Texas. You all do so much good for our economy and communities and so forth. But that's why we were in shock, I think, to hear what was taking place specifically in the 3 other states. And then the 2 individuals that were here today, if my memory serves me correctly, one was concerned about these rights that are so sacred being taken away broadly. And then I think we had one individual that testified that had a specific situation, if I remember correctly, maybe in the Panhandle, where there had been an issue where they were no longer able to practice as a realtor. So can you all speak to that specifically so we understand what happened in that case? And we want to get to the bottom of that, I guess, if you can help us understand why that occurred. And I guess what I want to know as well, are there other realtors in Texas that feel like they've been infringed upon at this point? Or is it just I want your perspective. I don't want to comment any further. I want you all to tell us what's really happened, and if there's a body of people that this has happened, if it's happened in a localized level versus the state association. I just want to understand and shed some transparency to get to the bottom of this.
Sure. Well, as Julia say, in Texas, nobody has lost their license because of some violation of religious or political speech of that matter. Under this article, in, say, the last 5 years or so, we have suspended one member for something that they said, and the thing that they said was sexual harassment. That falls under this same Article 10. It was, I will not go into details, but it was a male realtor at showing of a property with a member of the public, a female, and he made some very inappropriate contact, and it happened twice. That was the lone suspension of a realtor member under Article 10 in the last 5 years or so. So we have not suspended or terminated anybody for religious, political speech, or anything of that nature. Our first attempt when someone is found in violation of any of our code of ethics is really educational. We want to educate our members, make sure they understand that their ethical duties as far as being a realtor. And so we use fines and we use education. Later on, if there's continued conduct or especially egregious conduct, then we're talking suspension. Nobody has been suspended because of their something that's they said for religious or political reasons.
Let me follow up. Thank you for that. Let me follow up. Have there been procedural hearings in the last 5 years that deal with that topic, where perhaps you didn't go so far as to not allow them to have access any longer, so to speak, to the association, but that there was a process that unfolded where they were found, obviously, to not have done anything inappropriate? I mean, can you speak to that?
We've had in about the last 5 years, and I tried to kind of gather some statistics for you. It's going to take a little bit longer. I'll be happy to gather some more and send the committee the information. But in the last 5 years, we've had about 30 complaints dealing with Article 10. Okay, Article 10 is our own kind of fair housing article, so it's not just speech, it's any sort of behavior that might deal with discrimination. So 30, we have 150,000 members across the state, and we've had 30 complaints over the last 5 years or so, and many of those were dismissed outright at the first step, kind of our grand jury, as not even being a legitimate complaint. We've had some that have gone to a hearing where the person was able to defend themselves and bring in all their testimony evidence, where they were found not to be in violation, and only a small number of those where there was an actual violation. And again, one person was actually held to be suspended from our association, and that was a sexual harassment issue, not a religious or political issue.
So I take away from your testimony, and again, grateful that you're here, that what's been experienced by these other witnesses that were here today, the other 3 states, Montana, Virginia, and Arizona, from your perspective in running the Association of Texas, is not occurring here, and there's not an issue here, is really what you're really effectively testifying to. Is that right?
Exactly. From my experience, when a case can be very, very complicated, we're talking about real estate transactions oftentimes, that relationship can last for weeks and months, and there's a lot of things said. One of those things might be a political statement, but then there could be a whole host of other things that are said that have nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with religion, and there could be some false statements, some slanderous statements, some harassing statements. And at the hearing, you're going to hear all of it. You're going to read all the evidence. You're going to read all the emails and text messages. You get it all, and that's what the ultimate decision is based off of. And if somebody said, well, I was found in violation because I said this one thing, well, the hearing is what brings out the total story. And from my experience in knowing, reading testimony, reading evidence, we have not had a case where simply somebody said something, on the pulpit and then suddenly that they were found in violation. They could have said something on the pulpit, but then had a whole bunch of other testimony and texts and emails that were produced at the hearing that a violation was found. And it was found, again, not because somebody was offended, not because somebody didn't disagree, but because what they said went to fair housing issues.
Okay.
Senator, I'm sorry.
No, thank you. So appreciate all of that. And obviously, we were shocked this morning to hear all the testimony. I want to ask, I don't want to belabor the point, but I'd like for you all to coordinate. I know the two witnesses from Texas that were here, I know I believe them to be still here in the chamber. I'd like you all to be able to visit with them. I'd like to understand what it is, and I'd like you all to report back to us specifically what occurred, if that would be possible, so that we have an understanding of these particular cases, and then can effectively reconcile it with the other egregious things that we heard from these 3 other states in the country today, if that makes sense. Would you all mind doing that for us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely, we would not mind. Sorry.
Senator Perry.
Thank you. And so I came in a little late, and if you've already went through this, I apologize. But let me set the fact pattern, and I want to ask procedurally. This is more about a complaint and process. So a lady from Canyon, in her own personal capacity, went to a school board and was airing her concerns about inappropriate books in the library per her standards, which I think the majority of us would probably agree with what her standards are. And for that, a complaint was filed. Now, I believe, if I understand the facts patterns right, it was a national complaint.
Senator Perry, Ms. Haynes is still here. Why don't we call her back?
And so we're...
Do you have an objection about calling her?
I'd love to have her come up to make sure I get my facts right.
Ms. Haynes, if you're still here, come on up and take a seat. Please, go ahead.
If it was not a national complaint and it was levied at the state or her local, but jurisdictionally, it all means the same in my question. What I'm asking is, if you have a complaint that filters up to the state level, do y'all review that? Or are all complaints in that way, or do they go through, can a national come at someone directly? Or does it go through the local and state processes? And before we get there, am I correct that it was a national complaint or a local? Who was the complaint?
I believe it went through our board first.
Even though we know your name, introduce yourself and then give us your testimony. And turn that microphone on too. There you go.
Jamie Haynes from Canyon, Texas.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome back.
So someone filed a complaint with your local realtor board?
I believe, and again, this was in either 21 or 22, I'd have to go back and look, but I believe it first went through them and they had to okay it, and then it was the state association. And so, yeah.
So it didn't have a national tenet to it. It was because of the 10.5 national rule that was made by a committee that really had no rulemaking. It's their interpretation. It's what we learned this morning. But so it was a local to the state. So does the 10.5 National Ethics Code, which is all this is stemming from, do they always follow where it comes up from the grassroots or the ground level, or does it come down from the top down?
Right. In Texas, the State Association, Texas Realtors, we handle the process of all ethics complaints in the state. So anyone filing a complaint would come through our process. And then, again, we follow the step-by-step guides here to ensure that all of our members are receiving fair due process. But all complaints would come.
Can the locals ever decided at that level? Can the locals just say it's not rival to the level, or does all locals required to come to the state?
We have agreements with our local associations that we will handle the process. It's a very involved process. It takes a lot of resources from, just from a staffing standpoint. So we have agree with everyone that we'll handle the processing of ethics complaints in Texas.
So I'll ask 2 more questions, and I don't want this one to be a setup for a great debate. You heard the fact pattern, and I don't know what the status is currently. You remind me of where the status is with your complaint.
So I was found guilty, filed the appeal, and they kept the same result. And so at that point, I was up for some continuing education that needed to be done before my license expired, and I just let it expire or go inactive because I refused to be
So
silent.
to your previous comment, we've never suspended a license, but to Senator Parker's conversations, have you had proceedings that produced a result that would indicate you were guilty? We're not going to suspend you, we're not going to take your license, but we think you need continuing ed.
And let me interrupt just for a moment. There's a lot of moving parts, but for our friends from the Realtors, we know that you don't do licenses, but we're talking about you suspending someone from access to the organization and that sort of thing. It may lead to someone's license suspension, but we're talking about, our questions for you are you taking action that leads someone to resign or to withdraw or to maybe let the license get away? We know you don't revoke licenses, but please ask the question we're trying to ask. Go ahead.
Correct. And I believe in Ms. Haynes' case, there was
Let's go ahead and get this all out there, because he's alluding to some facts that weren't completely disclosed, so I want to tell you every single thing. So when I was bringing the inappropriate sexually explicit books along with all the documentation, my staff had printed it all out. I had one for every school board member along with some leadership in the school district, and so I had a ton of them, and they were heavy. They were so heavy they were breaking the Walmart sacks, even double-sacked. So I grabbed bags that that our brokerage has that have our logo about this big, 3x2. They're those bags that you buy at the grocery store, those recyclable bags to put your groceries in. That's literally the exact same bag that had our logo on there. And so I carried those up and handed those out only to the school board members. And so in the session, or whatever this was, hearings, that was brought up, that I was using my status as a realtor because the brokerage logo was on there. I thought nothing about that when we did it. It was simply just a bag to put the content in, and they were there. The second thing is they made the point over and over in both hearings that I was using my status in general as a realtor because my husband and I are on billboards, we're on magazines, and we're known in the community. And just the fact that I spoke in the public forum as a known realtor, and he didn't speak, he was in the crowd as a broker, that we were using our status for hate speech. And so to that point, where is that line? My husband very periodically, in fact, he's a walking billboard. He puts his brokerage on his shirt. He has them embroidered. He wears that every single day. We don't personally, but what if we had our brokerage on the side of our car? What if our billboard was rotating, as they do throughout our community, was literally on the billboard right in front of the school district where we went to speak? I mean, all of these things. We have Yetis. If I would have walked in with a Yeti with my brokerage logo, just drinking something out of it and set it down, whether that be at a school board meeting, a city council meeting, or just in the public forum, I cannot stop being a realtor wherever I go. And I have religious beliefs that I should be able to express whether I'm logoed up or not. People still know I'm a realtor. And so anyways, I just want to fully disclose that was some of the arguments in the hearing. And I felt like that they completely disregarded my personal religious beliefs, my First Amendment speech rights, that it didn't matter. The sexual orientation and gender identity piece of 10.5 is what they looked at. And again, I was not showing property. I was not talking about listings. There was nothing to do with that. I was just speaking in the public forum, trying to protect my child and other children in our school district. And again, if anybody comes to our brokerage and asks for services, we are 100% professional. We would never deny anyone anything. We would show any property, treat them, whether they were going to spend $5 or $5 trillion, we would treat them all the same and give them excellent customer service. Because again, this is our income. This is how we make a living, and we actually want to pass this down to our children. Any questions?
Any questions, sir?
I would just follow up that there's always two sides to every story, as Paul Harvey would say. We are publicly known. My face and our faces all over our districts. And we do have a level of decorum that we have to maintain so that we're not influencing. But at the same time, by what she described, if that's not factually accurate, you can correct it. But if it is, just because you're a large personality in a community does not make you set your freedom of speech and First Amendment rights on the sideline. And it sounds like to me that's the distinction. It's made because of a small logo, but it doesn't matter if the logo is on it. Evidently, people in Canyon, Texas know who you are. But if that's the standard we're going to have, it's pretty chilling, honestly, on so many levels, and it's wrong on so many levels. And I can appreciate that someone has monopolized a tool that is almost required to survive in your industry. And I would ask it, if it wasn't for the MLS, would Texas have any reason to be a part of the national? Texas is big enough to do its own MLS national. And probably there's a vendor that'll provide that to us. But unless her facts are not accurate, y'all have made a mistake. Because what you've said is, you really can't be known in the community to influence, of all things, education for our youth in a way that mirrors and aligns with that person's beliefs. Whether you agree with them or not, there could have been someone that followed up exactly after her that had a totally different value system and argued for the books. And if they're not known under your standard and they're a realtor, if they're not known, then they're okay to do that. But as a realtor, that's not. It'd be like me saying as a CPA, I can't express my religious views. And if I have to make a decision on what I'm going to express, it's going to be my religious views over CPAs all day long. But we don't get to do this as a professional standard. It's crossed the line.
I just want to add and be 1,000% forthcoming about everything. It was about the books, but it was also about the transgender child in the mental health program, and the fact that I spoke out against that the message in that mental health program for all children was that you too can come forward, they'll affirm your change in biological sex and get help and everything will just be fine. And I was against that messaging for our children. So just want to be completely clear about that as well. Wasn't just the books.
Thank you. Secretary Hinojosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick questions so I fully understand as well. In terms of the process, you talked about how it's got to go through multi-steps to end to an end result where a decision is made, something is determined by the end of it. Is there any point in time during that process, before the final, decision is made and whether the person violated the code or not, that any action is taken by your organization in the form of sending a reprimand letter, sending, anything before the final process is done, anything? There was a lady who testified, I don't know if she was from the state or not, a real estate broker indicated she asked a question, gave a hypothetical, and then she got a letter saying, that she shouldn't have done that, and nothing ended up happening or going forward with that. But in a way, that's kind of, if somebody's threatened with the possibility of saying, hey, this could potentially get you to lose, access to a listing or any of those kinds of things, or any of those types of actions, removal of access from listings, reprimand letters or anything, or is any of that done before the final determination is made in whether or not that person violated code in the opinion of the organization?
No action is taken until we have a final decision. So we have basically like our grand jury process, we've got our hearing process. If they appeal that, there will be recommendations for a sanction, but those will be put in abeyance. They're on hold if they appeal. And it's not until someone appeals that once we get the final decision, that's when actions are taken. It's possible that realtors try to informally talk about these rules. They've got a lot of rules. They've got rules, they've got state laws, they got federal laws, and so they talk amongst each other. If they say something or do something, you say, well, under the state law, you have to do it this way. And so that type of process can happen where someone might say, they say something, and informally another realtor might reach out and say, we've got this code, or we've got this, or we've got that. That could explain
So the
something that
testimony
happens,
of the lady who was here right before we left, the last witness before we broke, who indicated that she'd received a letter that's not likely to come from your organization.
That did not come from Texas Realtors.
So that's great. So then, like, would it be fair to say that SB 2713, if it were to pass, just to ensure that something like this doesn't ever happen in Texas, that there shouldn't be then any conflict with this bill and the national standard of code that you have to abide by? There shouldn't be any conflict, should there?
From my understanding, as long as we still have the ability to enforce, fair housing, as long as we have the ability to enforce, slander, if somebody lies about somebody else, if somebody misrepresents something about a property, that speech. You don't have the freedom of speech to lie about what somebody else did. You don't have the freedom of speech. So as long as we can still enforce our rules, I don't see this as an issue. Like Julie said, we're neutral on this bill. We're just trying to explain that our code deals with discrimination. It is not dealing with trying to restrict somebody's political speech or religious speech. It deals with providing professional services equally to everybody.
Sure. Well, and that's my question, is just in you reviewing the bill, you don't see that it would potentially conflict in any of those ways, right? That's what you're saying. You're on the bill. Otherwise, you would be saying we're against the bill, and this is why. Would you, or something to that nature? I would guess.
Yeah, that's accurate, Senator. So we've had this bill on just a monitor track as we track legislation that's moving through the process since it was filed. Most bills could probably even ones we support could probably benefit from a little bit of cleanup of language, but we are not opposed to this bill in any way.
Great. And thank you for that. That's basically bottom line what I was looking for. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And so I want to make sure I understand, and thank you each for your testimony. And I understand you and Senator Hinojosa just spoke about this, and Senator Bardwell had asked about it before. So I understand your position is neutral on the bill. If the bill passes, and the bill's in real good shape over here, and if the bill passes, you may have just answered this, but I want to make sure I'm clear. If the bill just passes and fact patterns like we heard about today come before the Texas Association of REALTORS, how will this bill affect your application of 10.5 in those situations? And it says denial of membership or services, and it talks about limitations, and it says including because of the person's exercise of the person's freedom of speech or assembly, notwithstanding any provision of the association's or organization's bylaws. I think you mentioned before, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I think you said before to Senator Bardwell that there's sort of you didn't use this phrase, but like a Mother Hubbard clause that says application of our bylaws is, of course, subject to state law, something along those lines. Does that sound right?
Yeah, all of our laws, all of our policies are subject to state, federal laws, yes.
So if this bill passes, then the Texas Association of REALTORS will apply those national standards subject to Texas law. I'm not telling, I'm asking. Is that right?
Yeah.
I kind of am telling, but I'm really asking. Not for me, but we're talking about Texas law, of course. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Senator. Any other questions for these witnesses? All right. Thank each of you for being here. You're excused.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Chair calls Sheila Hemphill, Dr. Susan Carranza, Aaron Walter. Those are the last three witnesses we have registered to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2713. Hemphill, welcome. Get situated there and introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Yes, sir. My name is Sheila Hemphill with Texas Right to Know, and I support this bill. Actually, since March 19th, I've been doing quite a bit of investigation into state law, and it's our rights of freedom of expression and freedom of speech. Am I correct in saying that state law would supersede in instructions of associations? I mean, is that how that works? I mean, in law, can agencies set up rules that allow for things that aren't allowed at the state level? Can they do that?
Now this bill, of course, isn't about agencies. It's about a Trade association.
That discrimination, right, but it's about speech. What we've heard today is about how people's speech has been interpreted and perceived and discriminated against. We've got instances in our own law that are supposed to be adjudicated upon perception. I'm deeply disturbed that we have law adjudicated on perception. How do you judge a perception? That's a feeling and emotion. The law goes also on to about expression. And so recent court ruling on an executive order of Governor Abbott that deals specifically to search out freedom of speech in regard to an issue I won't discuss because I don't want to cross information on bills, but I think it applies. While some may find her speech disagreeable, offensive, or even inflammatory, it is the bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment. The government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea itself offensive or disagreeable. So if United States District Court rulings has that statements about activities within state law, would that apply to these associations?
As a rule, the First Amendment limits the government, not private associations. In this situation, since the private association has a monopoly power and has control over someone's livelihood, we have to thread that needle. If this were the government, it would be a much cleaner situation, but these are private associations with great power over people's livelihood. So that's, if that answers your question.
I am acutely sensitive after watching what has happened, and I've been trying to communicate my concern about infringements on our freedom of speech. They can also...
Now, we need to stay on this bill,
speech discrimination. It was talking about their speech is what they were getting cited for. It's our speech.
Finish that thought, okay?
Sir?
Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
When people are in a position to find fault based on how they perceive a reaction, that makes the other person have to go into a defense mode. And as we all know, you can sue anybody over anything. And being accused of something, you have to go into defense mode. We are in slippery slopes when we are adjudicating on perception and we are inhibiting expression, which is what's happening in state law, and it was what was being described here under that association. So I support this bill.
Well, thanks for your testimony. Members, any question for Ms. Hemphill? Thank you for being here. Anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2713? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bills left pending at this time. Needs to have those subs on. If there's no objection, we'll take up some pending business while we do have a quorum. Before we do our last bill, if there's no objection, members.